Well, ladies and gentlemen, it's been a day or two, and when we say a day or two, it means it's been a year or two since you've seen PJ and the Godfather Pete James and myself Ryan Robinson on a screen together. It was a couple years back. I was crazy enough to try and take another job, and when you take another job that doesn't consist of working for the place that does the show, there's some other business to take care of on a Friday evening, which I've told anybody who would listen. The thing I missed the most about that job was the fact that a certain young man and I get together on a Friday night, usually sometime between October and April or May, and shoot the breeze. So then some things happened, and I went and did my job and did all that kind of thing. And you and I kept in close proximity, and now Pete, you're the free agent again. So I think that history repeats itself again. Pete James becomes a free agent, and somehow I turn around and say, "Hey, Pete, maybe you want to do something else." And now we're this is the best part for those who don't know, and those who watched our show previously. They know that Pete isn't exactly a fan of computers.
No, not a fan at all of computers.
And so
I was born much before the computer age came in.
And so I said to him, "Pete, let's do a podcast." And he said, "What the heck is that?"
yeah, that's exactly what I said. What cast?
Who casts? What does this work? Where do I have to go and do this? And
where do you jump on pods?
You can sit in the comfort of your own home, and we can shoot
I like
this.
This is it.
So now we came up with the PJ&RR show. It used to be called some other things, and I jokingly said we should just call it the Pete James Show because that's the way everybody always treated it anyway.
No.
I was always happy to be the traffic cop of the Pete James Hour, but some people didn't like when it was called the Pete James Hour. I was always a fan, and I'm the one who was hosting it. So
we're gonna go on for an hour. Boy, I'll have to reel back in the memory. You
used to get so upset when we had to cut off time. Now we can do as much time as we want. We can go 3 hours if we want. You and I could.
No.
We're not going to do that.
No.
People's attention span will go sideways. So, my friend, always good to see you. For those who don't know, even though we didn't do a show for a couple of years, we've still had lunch pretty much almost once a week for the entire time, outside of the usual craziness of my child, your grandchildren, everything that goes along with that. But you know what? We got a chance now. We're mainly told we're supposed to stay in our homes, so why not get together in our houses and talk a little sports? So
sure.
And let's not surprise anybody here, Pete, because our show beforehand was primarily centered around one group.
Yeah.
Now we get to expand the world of sports, which we both know we love so much. So we'll kind of tackle a multitude of topics over the show, and we'll have a bunch of episodes talking about all things. The fun part with this for me, we're going to talk about topics of the day. We're going to bring back some Pete James stories. So we'll dip into the archive a little bit. So you might have to roll those back a little bit there, Pete. And then along the way, we'll definitely bring in some friends of the Godfather to have some chats along the way about about all the aspects and all the goings on in a heck of a career, which is over. How many 15+ years now?
That's how many years. About 65.
Right. Let's not surprise anybody. Let's talk junior hockey first, because that's where that's where the most people expect. So I figure the first episode we got to go there.
And I sort of go back a long way with junior hockey, the London Nationals, the old London Ice House, the old London Arena. My goodness, it goes way back in my memory to the Ontario Arena is what I was trying to say. That it was a show rink for the animals at Western Fair. That's what it was originally. It's now part of Western Fair. It's a parking lot, and that arena morphed into the London Treasure Island Gardens, and that further down the line morphed into the Labatt Center. So it's then the Budweiser Center. So it's it's really been a history of arenae, maybe I should say, in this town as well as the junior hockey. The team was always known as the Nationals when I first came to town back in the 50s, and then it became the Knights.
Now, did you ever think you would see a day, Peter, that someone would say, "Go ahead and play junior hockey, but don't have body contact"?
Oh yeah, no, that's ridiculous. I've talked to some people around here, around my neighborhood, and they're all of the same opinion as I and you are. You and I. If you can't do it the right way, why bother doing it at all? You know, you're trying to develop. Let's face it, the OHL is a development league.
Mhm.
Everyone knows that. And if you're taking youngsters in their early teens and putting them on a situation where they can't check each other, I mean, it just doesn't make sense. And I think the overall opinion has been, if you can't do it the right way, wait until you can do it the right way. And so that's basically what it's been.
Now, here's my, because obviously you and I both know this is how we do shows. You have the opinion, even if I agree with you. I play devil's advocate for fun.
Yeah, sure.
But in the situation, I'm sure we both know the excitement and
Yep.
the intensity of hockey parents.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, obviously,
Oh, yeah.
there's been an investment made, on a parental aspect from
Yeah.
a team organization perspective. I kind of take a look at, we were kind of joking before we started here that usually when the NHL wants to do something different, they make the AHL do it for a year. Hopefully,
Test run.
hopefully there's never any glowing pucks again. We'll leave that alone. Um,
Test
but
run.
I know in the GOJHL, for example, everybody's in the same situation right now. What's my return to play model?
Yeah.
And we know that we'll talk about the OHL situation here in a second. But I know the GOJHL did the same thing where they kind of said we want to. Initially, they said they wanted to come back in December.
Yeah.
Then they have since changed that, and I think everybody's kind of, in my mind, kind of using random start dates just as a,
Hmm.
hey, we hope to at this point sort of thing. Now we
Right.
both know as kind of time has progressed here, there's talk of, and there's vaccines on the horizon, and some people are seeing that as
Yeah.
a light at the end of the tunnel. So maybe the folks who are kind of saying, maybe if because we know as we talk right now in kind of early December, the
Yeah.
talk is the GOJHL wants to start in the middle of January.
Hmm.
OHL wants to start early February.
Early
Um,
February.
the
Hmm.
GOJHL has said they want to go with what they're calling a cohort system. So the teams would basically one team will play against another team inside of their own conference
Yeah.
for a 3-week cycle. So in my mind, I take a look at a traditional, junior B schedule. Usually each team plays each other 6 times during the year.
Yeah.
They'll play 3 at one and 3 at the other as far as home rinks.
Right.
Now, is that a scenario? And even the NHL is talking about that now with their return to play in January, is doing almost an MLB style situation where you go in, you play 3 games, then you've gone to your location, you played your 3 games, and then you don't have to worry about it.
Yeah.
Is this a situation that the OHL should be looking at, where because you take a look at the breakdown of the divisions, for example,
Yeah.
you do have a lot of close proximity teams. Now, there's obviously health regulations right now around whether you can go into those. The OHL should look at.
I really don't know, Ryan. You get into geographic rivalries. London, Kitchener, London and Sarnia, Windsor. This is a situation that it's confounding because it's not being done the way it should be done. They want to get
Mhm.
the kids back on the ice, but is it fair? Is it going to be fair to the young men who are coming along? And I don't know. I don't think, unless you can do it, as I said, the way it should be done, don't do it at all.
Well,
End
I
of
take
story.
for example the couple games I've seen that the Nationals they played against Kamoka. It's
Yeah.
it's in the hockey player DNA to when your opposition skates to the corner with a puck
Oh,
that you
yeah,
try and run them into the board.
sure,
And now,
sure.
obviously, with the regulations that are surrounding body contact and so on and so forth, they're trying to operate under under these modified rules of agreement with I believe, the Ontario Hockey Federation.
Yeah,
But if you body check, it's a penalty.
yeah,
Um, and the other thing too is if it's kind of seen as unnecessary body contact, it's ejection from the game.
yeah.
Um,
And this runs against everything that the kid has learned up to this point.
mhm.
Now, is he going to have to change his thinking to go by the rules that you suggest, or just what's going on in these teenage minds? I can't hit him. I can't hit him. I can't get the puck. Is the guy who wins the opening faceoff of the game gonna end up on the winning on the winning team? Because no one can take the puck away from him. They can't. I mean, I'm stressing a point, maybe, but you know what I mean. It's just it's ludicrous. You can't, and Lisa Raid is, or Lisa McLeod, I should say, she isn't doing anything wrong by outlawing body checking in junior hockey. She's doing right. She's trying to protect us all, and that's her job. So I don't know. I still go back to the point: if you can't do it the way it should be done, don't do it until you can. Until
well,
you
and,
can't play it the way it should.
and I'm thinking that you take a look at the university model, and I would be remiss if I didn't say that job that I made a change for
Yeah.
is at a university. So, with
Hmm.
full disclosure, I'm obviously spending a little time over at the said purple and white university in town. But they've gone the model even at that point that back in the summer, they had the OUA and U Sports announced that they were canceling the kind of competition schedule in the fall based around, in a scenario that some people didn't like at the time, but they have to make a decision at some point, and they did. And then they've made the same decision when it came to winter sports. No competitive, schedule where one university is traveling to another to play against each other. Pretty much every university has gone the method of having a training session. So the hockey teams, the basketball teams, and so on and so forth, everyone is practicing, but there's
Yeah.
no competition. I partially think that that's the way, and it's difficult to, obviously, in a scenario with a university situation, you're there for education and you
Yeah. Yeah.
participate in athletics at the same time, so
Hmm.
you're for the most part physically there. It's a little bit more maybe difficult for a junior hockey team. Let's say, for example, an Owen Sound, doesn't matter, Owen Sound, Sarnia, whatever it may be. Those the kids who play on those teams move to live with billets and so on and so
Yeah.
forth, go to their
Hmm.
respective schooling. It might be harder for them to do that method where it's just like, okay, just train for, or just have practice or on ice sessions for, however many months, sort of thing. So is it driven by a monetary value where you have sponsors and so on and so forth, where they have
Yeah.
to say, let's try and make something happen for an OHL year
Yeah.
because we still have sponsors expectations that we have to kind of abide by.
Yeah. You have to wrap everything into a neat little package for these players, but still in all, I mean, I don't see how going back to my point of it being a development league for these young hockey players. They want to all play pro. All of them come into this league with aspirations of the NHL, and there's nothing wrong with that. But very few of them will get to the NHL. Uh, but the point I'm trying to make is how do you prepare these kids for the NHL or for pro hockey at the next level up without body checking? I mean, it just, you can't do it. All of a sudden, you've got this whole new scenario flung at you that you can't go into a corner and, as you said, bump a guy off the puck because that will be a penalty. I mean, it's just nonsensical to me.
And at the same point, they're having a tough enough time getting the everything's situated for the World Junior Championship, and that's
Yeah,
obviously up here for those level of players as well. So
yeah,
either way, it's interesting for me. I think at this point, the floating, OHL February 4th deadline as we kind of approach the end of December here. Uh,
hmm
you almost would think that training camps and so on and so forth, whether those happen or not,
yeah.
uh,
They're supposed to.
you'd think if the teams would have to be, into their respective cities in at least right after the new year, because I'm assuming, especially if you're changing health demographics, sort of their health unit demographics, if you're going from, even if you're in Ontario, for example, you still probably have to do some kind of quarantine period of 14
Yeah,
days or whatever it may be. So it might be a scenario where you have to quarantine for the first half of January before you can have a 2 or 3 week, because OHL training camps are usually only a couple of weeks, sort of thing.
January 23rd is the suggested starting date. January 23rd, the opening of camps. But who's to say that this pandemic that we're all facing, it's not going to go away?
Mm,
Might get that much worse, and you'll have to. There'll be this suspension of all activities.
mm,
I just don't know how. I mean, the WHA, they've put a start date in January.
mm,
The QMJHL, the Quebec League, they were operating at one stage and then
mm.
shut it down. Then they had to shut down because of the pandemic. It's just foolish. It's trying to beat the system that's terrible. It's an awful situation. And what is happening at the World Junior? What's going on there? I don't know. There's so much. There's so many unanswered questions, and things change daily. It's almost like you get this terrible number count every day of people dying of this pandemic. It's tough, tough.
So let's play fantasy hockey fan here for a
Yeah,
second.
sure.
You get into the OHL, they find a way to make it so they can play, whether it has restricted rules or not. Now, the main question obviously would be, and I think when you look at the whether it's moving players from within health demographics and 14-day quarantines and so on and so forth, we know full well that the NHL is dealing with a situation right now where it looks like they're going to have an all Canadian division because it
That's
makes it
yeah.
easier for travel purposes and the
hmm
closed border.
There's another thing.
What about those three that are on the other side of that border?
Yeah, there's another thing, the closed border. What are you going to do about that? I haven't heard anything come out of the league other than have them play among themselves. Well, that would be pretty boring if you had to do that, but you can't get across the border. This is a political decision that's been made, and a good one, I think. So how do you accommodate Flint, Saginaw, and Erie without making it a straight USA three-team conference?
Well, and that's the thing too, as you say, even in the GOJHL situation where they go the cohort, where you would just play one other team for 3 weeks or
Yeah,
whatever it may be, then
yeah,
you take your 14-day break. Well, even if in a three-team division, was Saginaw going to play Erie for 3 weeks?
that's it.
Well, Flint just sits there and practices or something
Yeah,
like that. And the other avenue that I've heard, kind of, and again, more of the rumor mill than anything,
yeah,
is have Flint, Saginaw, and Erie come into either a neutral site
uh,
building here in kind of close proximity to the border so
yep,
that they're in the same vicinity, or share venues with current teams.
yep,
So, whether Saginaw goes and plays in Windsor or,
yeah,
Sarnia, for example, and that kind of thing. The only issue that I kind of see there is, it's it's having more bodies in a similar building. So you have to have because we take a look at, say, Bud Gardens, for example,
yeah.
the Knights have their own dressing room, and the
hmm
opposition team will play in a room down, the opposite end of the hall. Now there
Right.
are two or three other dressing rooms in there. So could you, have a scenario where, there could be three or four teams in there? In my mind, yes. But the only difficulty is then you have a scenario where, say, for example, who practices when, and
Yeah,
how that kind of situates. But I think honestly, I'm no building operations manager, but that, as far as organizing who comes in and who goes out at what times and so on and so forth,
yeah.
that could work.
Oh yeah, it can work if you want it to, and I guess they do want it to. But this going back to the situation of the three American teams, where would they play? So say they went to Windsor, or one of them went to Windsor. Say Flint went to Windsor or Saginaw, as you suggest. That's fine. What are the Windsor fans going to do? I mean, are they going to go out and support? Oh boy, we got another team here. We can support both the Spitfires and the Saginaw, the Spirit. I don't think so.
I don't think we're seeing fans and stands either way. So
There you go.
which is
Yeah,
I think the other side of the actual coin, the coin actually works
yeah,
really well in that situation. It's a ticket driven league.
yep.
You aren't floating a junior hockey franchise over the sale of T-shirts and foam fingers.
No,
It's
no.
people paying money at the door to get in, and percentages or whatever of concessions and so on and so forth, which requires obviously people to buy a ticket and people to buy popcorn. Well,
Yeah.
if you can't have, we've seen some places in the States with with football, even some NFL teams are kind of spreading a number of people out, but
But
I
they
don't
have
think
television. They have the television revenue coming in the NFL
yeah.
and in their big colleges, college games. They have the television revenue, and they have to fill the time. So there's another component in that scenario, but there isn't television to be considered when it comes to the OHL. As you said, it's a ticket-driven league.
Mhm.
You got to have ticket sales, and I just don't see how. I mean, London can survive. I would think if, say, they, for argument's sake, they allowed half, half a rink. If there's enough people want to go,
I don't
and
think
they,
that's the other thing that I was thinking when you were saying, and sorry to cut you off, but when you said about, say, Saginaw playing in Windsor or whatever it may be,
yeah,
I think there'll still be, whether there's a percentage of people allowed in the building, or whether it's just the community cable station kind of goes and does probably a minimal broadcast, because again, you can't have, you take a look at and you and I both know the broadcast trucks that do those
hmm,
games. They're it's decently spaced, but usually there's half a dozen people in that truck. Well, you're
oh
not
yeah,
going to
oh
have half
yeah,
a dozen people in that small of a space now. So even if they can do something, I think it'll be a simplified version, because I think it has to be. But I think there'll still
mhm.
be an appetite to watch it. I mean, you and I complained about how much about not wanting to watch the same repeat of a game that already happened over the early part of this year, and
Oh yeah,
I think we probably still watched it even though we weren't a big fan of it.
yeah. Yes. Some people don't like that. My opinion is my own preference. If it isn't live, if it isn't happening right there, then I'm not. If I know the result, let's put it that way, then I'm not interested in it.
It's an interesting factor there. So yeah,
Yeah,
going going back to your point before, if you can't put, even if if you can put, and it works in a situation of Bud Gardens, for example, where
yeah,
9,000 people and they say, oh, you can have 30%. Well,
yep.
okay, you can still have 3,000 people.
Yep. Yep. No, that's true. And I've had people say to me, I'm not going. I'm not going to go. I'm not going to go there and risk, getting COVID-19 over a hockey game.
Mhm.
I don't think it's worth that risk. And how can you blame them?
Yeah, and that's the thing. It's a scenario where it's kind of like, they're, I think they're trying to find a way to keep the kids who are actively engaged with their team and and the game and everything like that, to have some kind of optimism of a situation, or
Yeah.
either it be training, whether it be only playing against one other team for a couple of weeks, or in some kind of scrimmage based situation, and kind of keeping them with something to do, because I think that's the other aspect right now,
Hmm.
that we're so far along the lines of this thing now that everybody's just kind of like, and you still have to be diligent, you have to do all the right things, but you're kind of going, okay, where's the light, sort of thing. And I
Yeah.
think you and I both agree that I think with the vaccine on the horizon and everything, and neither of us are doctors or health professionals, nor do we
No,
see
no,
it on
no.
television. It feels like there might be the glimmer, but it's
Yeah,
still
yeah,
a ways away.
yeah. You're right on. I think there is light at the end of the tunnel, but how long is the tunnel? It's a fair stretch, and for hockey players to get this vaccine, uh, it's going to be a while.
Mhm.
And to wrap this up, let's do what we said right off the top.
Mhm.
Uh, if you can't do it properly, don't do it at all until you can. And I don't know. I rest my case at that. I want Mark and Dale to be going as well as the next guy, and I want the other teams, Kitchener, Sarnia, Windsor, all of them, to be going as well as the next guy. But if you can't do it the way it was, the way it should be done, don't do it until you can.
I definitely agree. So let's shift gears to we call it the Pete James Archive. And we'll always try and feature a fun story or two, one that we maybe haven't heard before, because we have enjoyed a story or two over the
Yeah,
years.
over the years, yeah.
The one that I don't think we were able to actually get to when we were doing our show was the creation of the London junior hockey franchise, which, as you mentioned, it became the Knights later on, but initially it was uh,
Nationals.
the Nationals. But
Mhm.
this is a story of an interesting story. Take us through the process of how it happened. But then,
How
secondarily, take us through the process of how you found out all the details of what was going on, because this was not the traditional way of waiting for a press release.
oh, no, no. What happened was back in the '60s, London had a brand new arena, and it was called Treasure Island Gardens. And they were successful. They were successful at the box office. So were they successful at the box office? And they were successful on the ice as well, to the point where the people who ran the franchise at that time said, let's apply to Junior A, OHA Junior A, which was the top level of junior hockey in the province. They wanted to become the ninth team. They were Niagara Falls, St. Catharines, Hamilton, and Kitchener, Toronto, Oshawa, Peterborough, and the Montreal Junior Canadiens. So the London delegation, they went down to, I think it was Toronto. I don't know exactly where it was, but all the teams were there, representatives of all the teams, and they made application to join the OHA Junior A Hockey League, which it was called at the time. The OHL came along later, but to get to your point, I was down when London presented its case for membership. They were excused, and you go out into that room and you wait. And I went out with them. Uh, Ernie Miller was there as well from the London Free Press. He covered hockey, and when the other 8 members were discussing the London application, Miller and I, both of us, had our ears to the keyhole of the door uh, that connected the 2 rooms, and the old ear to the keyhole, listening and writing down some things that were said. Well, because I didn't want to miss anything. Hey, this was a big story. This was a huge story. London was applying to become the ninth team in this 8-team league, and it was they were accepted unanimously, except for the Montreal Junior Canadiens, because at that point in time, Sam Pollock ran everything with the Montreal Junior Canadiens, with the Montreal Canadiens, would be a junior or senior. And Phil Wimmer was down here from Montreal, and he had to go back and report to Sammy. And the next day, Sam called in his approval of allowing London into the league, and that was it. The next, let me see now, how many years? 67. In 1967, the Ottawa 67s came into the league, quite obviously, and it was back to an even numbered teams in the league. They were not London was the ninth team in the league, and then Ottawa made it a 10-team league, and the rest, you know. But yeah, old Miller and I were both down at the ear to the keyhole, you know, and checking our notes.
And at the time there was 9 and 10, and now there's 20. So
9 and 10, and now there's 20.
and it's time has gone on. Now my other favorite part about that was the fact that you two are down ear to the keyhole, which we think that maybe you two might be the reason for those heavy fire doors now that you can't actually hear through. But secondarily, you were telling me that the London delegation was in the same room you guys were in.
Oh yeah,
They were probably kind of going, "Oh, we can't say that we're tampering," but I'm sure they might have said, "Hey, Pete, what are they saying in there?"
they actually got a kick out of Miller and I being down on our hands and knees listening at the door, listening at the ear hole, the keyhole rather. Now you got me way a little flustered. Ear to the keyhole, that's what it was. And but they got a kick out of that. I think there was three of them there. I think it was Art Lawson. He was there. He would be there. He was the manager of the London junior team, B club, and maybe Eddie Bishop, and he ran the arena. And Roy Bonney was the overlord of them all. And they were all they got a kick out of it, though. They thought that was quite hilarious.
And the best part of why we decided to do this whole thing was the factor of the amount of times that you and I have sat and enjoyed a sandwich at lunch and shot the breeze. And you've told me a few stories over the time. I know you have a couple of children who have been pushing you to make your own book. So I said, I kind of said to them, here's what my plan is. Pete and I want to get back together and shoot the breeze about sports matters of the day. And
Yep.
at the same point, let's try and get a few of those stories from the PJ archives out. So my friend, I think you're going to have to pull out a few more of those gems. And I think you probably got a couple in there, I think, right?
Yeah, one or two. Yeah, one or two.
All right, and I think that'll wrap up the first one here, Pete. It's always fun to get together and chat. I know you've got a couple other stories, and we got to make sure that we keep people coming back and wanting more. So we'll do this again in the near future. You know, the advantage for me is this makes life easy for me. We usually just come up with a topic at lunch, and then all of a sudden we just fire away. So this is fun. Let's do it again. And for all those watching, thanks for watching. If you've got any PJ stories, this is the best part about the digital age, Peter. We can invite people to send us either their questions, and we'll call it Ask PJ. You want to ask Pete a question, feel free to throw it in a comment section below. We will include it on the show as well. And if you have some fun Pete James stories, feel free to send those in. Nobody wants to hear a story about me, so we'll just carry on with the day. So we will have some fun with this. So yeah, send in your questions for Pete. If you've got a Pete story, make sure to send those in, and we'll try and get a couple of friends of PJ on in the next couple of episodes as well. So I got a few people in mind that I think you might enjoy. Just in those situations, I'm just going to sit back. And as I usually do, I call myself the traffic cop of the Pete James Hour. I welcome them in, and I just sit back and enjoy like everybody else.
It's been a lot of fun, Ryan, and we'll do it again real soon.
Sounds good, my friend. We'll talk to you soon.
Okay.
Be good, young man.
Yep.